Hi, I am Odba from the Jahjaga Foundation, and I welcome you to the Jahjaga Foundation course on Women, Peace and Security. This course has 3 modules. The first one has to do with no gender. The second module has to do with the Women, Peace and Security agenda. And thirdly, we have Women, Peace and Security agenda in Kosovo. Introduction to the course Women, Peace and Security. In a world where conflict and unrest disrupts societies and devastates lives, the role of women in promoting peace and security has never been more critical. As half of the global population, women bring unique perspectives and experiences that help address the root causes of violence and foster sustainable peace. The United Nations Security Council's landmark resolution 1325, adopted in 2000, marked a turning point by emphasizing the importance of women's involvement in peace processes, conflict resolutions, and post-conflict reconstruction. This resolution, along with the subsequent policies and initiatives, has paved the way for a more inclusive and equitable approach to peace building. In Kosovo's post-conflict recovery, the role of women in promoting peace and security has proven to be crucial. Emerging from the shadows of war, Kosovo has witnessed the resilience and strength of women as they navigate the complexities of post-conflict reconstruction and nation building. The adoption of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security has been essential in recognizing and intensifying the contributions of women to peace processes in Kosovo. Kosovo's women have been at the forefront of community reconciliation, advocacy for human rights, and the establishment of inclusive governance, ensuring that the voices of all members of society are heard. Despite significant progress, challenges persist, including deep-seated cultural norms and gender biases that hinder the full participation of women in decision-making processes. Addressing these challenges requires collaborative efforts from governments, international organizations, and civil society to create an environment where women can thrive as leaders and peace builders. The journey towards lasting peace and security is a collective one, and it is imperative that women are at the forefront, shaping the future we all aspire to achieve. This course will give an overview of gender and women's rights in peace and security contexts, the international and Kosovo legal framework for advancing gender equality, and women's empowerment in peace building and security initiatives. Methodology. The Women, Peace and Security online course comprises of 3 modules and 9 units. This course employs the simple learning methodology by presenting the topic, title of each module, and the course is comprised of. Then the possibility for the learner to test themselves is provided through the introductory, simple questions in the beginning of each course module. After the learner is introduced with the learning outcome of each module, then a brief and thorough introduction of the module is provided. The units of each module contain theoretical and practical knowledge of the given module. The summary of each module is provided in order to sum up the module and prepare the learner to best answer to the quiz that is meant to test the knowledge gained of the learner after each module. Every unit of the module contains the literature that was consulted, and also the recommended additional readings for each module is provided. Objective of the module No Gender. By the end of this module, learners will develop critical thinking skills in analyzing gender-related issues and discourse, Engage in self-reflection on personal beliefs, experiences, and biases related to gender. Distinguish between sex, gender, and sexuality, and understand the nuances of these terms. Examine the ways in which cultural norms and practices shape and are shaped by gendered experiences. Communicate effectively about gender issues using academic and practical language. Introduction to the module No Gender. This module explores the multi-layered concept of gender, examining its historical evolution, theoretical frameworks, and current challenges. It provides a thorough understanding of gender as a social construct, its intersection with other identity categories, and the impact of gender norms on many aspects of our life. Gender is a fundamental part of human identity and society, influencing many of our daily experiences and interactions. Historically, gender has been understood through a binary lens, categorizing individuals strictly as male or female based on biological differences. However, this binary approach does not reflect the complexity and diversity of gender identities and expressions. The evolution of gender concepts over time has been shaped by cultural, social, and political forces. In pre-modern societies, gender roles were rigid, with clear distinctions between the roles and responsibilities of men and women. However, the 19th and 20th centuries saw significant shifts in gender dynamics, especially with the rise of feminist movements that challenged traditional notions of gender and advocated for women's rights and gender equality. Theoretical frameworks such as gender as a social construct, intersectionality, and queer theory have further enhanced our understanding of gender. These approaches show how gender intersects with other identity categories such as race, class, and sexuality, and how social norms and structures reinforce gender inequalities. Modern gender studies also emphasize the experiences of non-binary and transgender individuals, promoting a more inclusive and flexible understanding of gender. Although progress has been made in recognizing and addressing gender inequalities, many challenges remain. Gender norms continue to influence different aspects of life, including education, the workplace, and healthcare. This module explores these issues, providing a clear understanding of gender concepts and offering practical insights for promoting gender inclusivity and awareness. Now we will move on into gender concepts and definitions. The concepts and definitions in this section are as follows. Sex. Intersex. Gender. Gender identity. Gender expression. Sexual orientation. Gender equality. Gender equity. Intersectionality. Gender mainstreaming. Gender responsive. International frameworks for protection and promotion of gender equality. A number of international documents and policy documents protect and promote women's rights in general and in situations of violence and insecurity specifically. These international documents and policy documents incorporate both general protections for women, based on the similarities between men and women, and special protections based on the difference between men and women. Key international frameworks for gender equality are as follows. Kosovo's legal framework for protection and promotion of gender equality has improved significantly in recent years, aligning with international standards to protect and promote gender rights. According to the European Commission's 2024 report on Kosovo, the country's gender equality laws are generally in line with international conventions and the EU acquis. However, the report stated that gender mainstreaming, the systematic inclusion of gender equality principles in laws and policies in Kosovo's laws and policy documents remains inconsistent. While gender equality is recognized, it is not fully integrated across all legal and policy areas. The following table lists specific laws in Kosovo that address gender equality in Kosovo. Congratulations for completing Module 1. Now we've arrived at the summary. Gender concepts and definitions help us in understanding gender. Each discipline has specific concepts. Gender identity and gender roles are the key aspects of understanding gender. Gender identity is the way you personally identify your gender. Gender roles are important to understand because these are culturally and socially defined ways that gender is expected to be performed and can often be harmful to folks who fall outside of the binary system, often upheld through systematic and cultural institutions. Gender roles are often linked to the sex individuals are assigned at birth. Thus, gender roles often reveal the ways that we make culturally contextual assumptions about what different types of bodies should do. International frameworks such as CEDAW, the Beijing Platform for Action, and SDGs provide the foundation for global efforts to achieve gender equality. Development organizations have a critical role to play in advancing these goals by mainstreaming gender in their work, promoting women's leadership, addressing gender-based violence, and creating inclusive work environments. Despite these legislative advances, Kosovo faces challenges in fully implementing gender equality. Issues such as gender-based violence, discrimination in the labor market, and underrepresentation of women in politics remain prominent. The government continues to work on strengthening the enforcement of laws, improving public awareness, and increasing the representation of women in leadership roles. Development organizations have a critical role to play in advancing these goals by mainstreaming gender in their work, promoting women's leadership, addressing gender-based violence, and creating inclusive work environments. Despite these legislative advances, Kosovo faces challenges in fully implementing gender equality. Issues such as gender-based violence, discrimination in the labor market, and underrepresentation of women in politics remain prominent. The government continues to work on strengthening the enforcement of laws, improving public awareness, and increasing the representation of women in leadership roles. In summary, Kosovo has a well-built legal framework for the protection and promotion of gender equality. Although continued efforts are needed to address existing challenges and fully implement these laws to ensure gender equality in practice. In summary, Kosovo has a well-built legal framework for the protection and promotion of gender equality. Although continued efforts are needed to address existing challenges and fully implement these laws to ensure gender equality in practice. Now we will move on to the second module of this course, which will dive deeper on the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. Objective of the module Women, Peace and Security Agenda. By the end of this module, the learners will understand the key concepts and principles of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, analyze the role of women in conflict and peace building, including the impact of gender-based violence, evaluate international frameworks and resolutions related to WPS, and understand the challenges and successes in their implementation. Be equipped with practical skills for advocating for women's inclusion in peace processes and gender-sensitive policies. Contribute to the development of innovative solutions for advancing the WPS agenda at local, national, and global levels. Introduction to the module Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. This module explores the intersection of gender, peace, and security. It looks into the important role that women play in peace building, conflict prevention, and post-conflict reconstruction. The course will provide learners with an understanding of the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda, its historical context, key international frameworks, and current challenges in global peace and security. Historically, traditional peace and security approaches marginalized women and ignored the gendered impacts of conflict. Furthermore, while women have always been involved in peace building and conflict resolution, their contributions were often sidelined in formal peace processes. This exclusion led to advocacy efforts for the inclusion of women in peace and security. Early efforts can be traced back to the United Nations and global women's rights movements, but meaningful progress only accelerated in the late 20th century. In the 1990s, growing recognition of the specific impact of conflict on women and the need to include them in peace processes led to increased calls for their inclusion in peace processes. A landmark event was the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing in 1995, which laid the groundwork for the WPS agenda by emphasizing the importance of gender equality in peace and security. The Beijing Platform for Action called for the full participation of women in conflict resolution and peace building, marking a shift towards considering women as agents of peace. This momentum culminated in October 2000 with the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, the first formal international policy document to explicitly recognize the disproportionate impact of conflict on women and call for their participation in peace and security efforts. It marked the beginning of a comprehensive global agenda on women, peace, and security. The Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. The Women, Peace, and Security Agenda is a framework that specifically addresses the unique security needs of women, recognizing that women experience security threats differently from men, particularly in conflict, post-conflict, and unstable environments. It focuses on both protecting women from violence and ensuring their active participation in peace-building and security processes. This agenda aims to create a world where women's security needs are integrated into national, regional, and international security policies, recognizing that true peace and security cannot be achieved without addressing gender-specific concerns. The Women, Peace, and Security Agenda was formally established with the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in year 2000. This resolution recognized the disproportionate impacts of conflict on women and called for their inclusion in peace processes, the protection of women from gender-based violence, and the integration of gender perspectives into all aspects of peace and security. Since then, the Women's Security Agenda has continued to develop with additional UN Security Council resolutions addressing issues such as sexual violence in conflict. For example, Resolution 1820, and the need for women's participation in counter-terrorism and counter-extremism efforts. For example, Resolution 2242, among others. Despite the growing recognition of women's security needs, challenges remain in fully implementing the agenda. The cultural and social barriers, along with deeply ingrained gender inequalities, continue to hinder progress. Moreover, despite the existence of frameworks and resolutions, implementation remains inadequate, leaving many countries struggling to effectively address women's security concerns. The continuous emerging security threats and challenges further complicate these efforts. Issues such as cyber violence and climate change-induced displacement create additional new vulnerabilities for women. The four pillars of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. The Women's Security Agenda is typically structured around four key pillars that address the multi-layered security needs of women. These pillars guide international, national, and local efforts to ensure that women's experiences, contributions, and specific security challenges are recognized and addressed in peace and security processes. While there is no universally standardized version of these four pillars, they generally include the following: protection. Participation. Prevention. Relief and recovery. Implementing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. Implementing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda requires a comprehensive, multi-level approach that integrates women's needs, perspectives, and contributions into peace-building, conflict resolution, and security efforts. While significant progress has been made since the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in year 2000, challenges remain in translating these frameworks into real, meaningful actions. Here's an overview of key steps and strategies for effective implementation. Adoption and implementation of national action plans. One of the most concrete ways countries implement the WPS agenda is through national action plans, which outline how the goals of the WPS framework will be realized at the national level. These plans focus on the participation, protection, and prevention of women in conflict and post-conflict contexts, as well as their involvement in peace processes. Steps for effective NAP implementation. Government ownership. Monitoring and accountability. Funding. Strengthening women's participation in peace and security. Women's participation in peace negotiations, peacekeeping missions, and decision making processes is one of the cornerstones of the WPS agenda. However, women are often excluded from these areas due to systematic gender inequalities, biases, and a lack of political will. To address these barriers, several key strategies are most commonly used to strengthen and enhance women's participation. Strategies for strengthening and enhancing women's participation. Quota systems. Capacity building. Inclusive peace processes. Support women peace builders. Addressing gender-based violence in conflict and post-conflict settings. A central focus of the WPS agenda is the prevention and response to gender-based violence, particularly sexual violence during armed conflicts. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by GBV, and addressing this is crucial for building sustainable peace. Here are the main strategies for addressing GBV. Strategies for addressing GBV. Legal frameworks. Survivor support. Prevention programs. Engaging the security sector. Integrating gender perspectives in security sector reform. In post-conflict societies, security sector reform is often necessary to rebuild institutions and ensure that security forces serve all populations rightly. The WPS agenda emphasizes integrating gender perspectives into SSR to ensure that the needs and voices of women are considered in the rebuilding of security institutions. Key actions in SSR. Gender sensitization. Women's role in security forces. Building trust. Promoting international cooperation and advocacy. The WPS agenda requires international cooperation to address global security challenges that affect women. This includes support from international organizations such as the United Nations, World Bank, and regional organizations like the African Union and European Union, as well as partnerships with civil society organizations and grassroots movements. Key approaches to international cooperation. Cross-border collaboration. Advocacy and lobbying. global conferences and dialogues, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. To ensure that the WPS agenda is effectively implemented, it's essential to have mechanisms in place for monitoring and evaluation. This allows for tracking progress, identifying gaps, and making adjustments where necessary. Monitoring and evaluation strategies. Gender-sensitive indicators. Accountability frameworks. Inclusive data collection. Now we've come to the end of the second module. Moving on to the summary. As we've learned, the Women's Security Agenda is a critical framework for addressing the specific security needs and rights of women. It recognizes the interconnectedness of women's protection, participation, and empowerment in achieving lasting peace and security. As conflicts evolve and the global landscape shifts, keeping this agenda at the forefront of peace and security efforts is essential for a just and sustainable future for women globally. These four pillars, protection, participation, prevention, and relief and recovery, form the foundation of the Women's Security Agenda, aiming to create a world where women are safe, empowered, and included in all aspects of peace and security. They address the unique challenges women face in conflict and post-conflict settings, and ensure that women play an active role in building lasting peace. Implementing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda is an ongoing process, requiring collaboration between governments, international organizations, civil society, and local communities. Welcome to the third and last module of this course. So far, we've talked so much about the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, and now we will be talking about how it is implemented in the context of Kosovo. Objectives of the module implementing Women, Peace and Security in Kosovo. By the end of this module, learners will understand the foundations of women, peace and security, and its transformative role in achieving gender equality. Understand the legal framework in Kosovo and the interaction with the UN policy guidance on the Women, Peace and Security agenda. Examine the implementation of the UN SCR 1325 in Kosovo. Analyze the role of women in Kosovo's post-conflict reconstruction and peace building. Critically assess challenges to WPS implementation in Kosovo. Introduction to the module implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda in Kosovo. The implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda in Kosovo is crucial, given its post-conflict context and ongoing efforts towards peace and state building. Following its declaration of independence from Serbia in 2008, after the Kosovo War in 1998 and 1999, Kosovo has faced challenges in integrating gender-sensitive approaches into its peace and security policies. The post-war context, long-time repression, past human rights violations, historical gender inequality, culture and traditions are among the reasons that hinder the integration of women in all sectors of public and private life. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, which forms the foundation of the WPS agenda, emphasizes the importance of women's participation in peace processes, protection from violence and conflict, and the integration of gender perspectives into security frameworks. While Kosovo is not yet a member of the United Nations, it has made strong commitments to the WPS agenda as part of its national policies. The UN SCR 1325 is incorporated in the national legislation of Kosovo, making it a priority by state institutions. Throughout history, women in Kosovo have been able to demonstrate an effective role in shaping democratic values, nation building, and in the development of the society. They have challenged stereotypes and social norms in order to create a more open and inclusive society. Their efforts have expanded societal debate on the importance of upholding human rights for everyone, advocating for equal treatment without discrimination or bias based on different, undermining, and unfair principles in society. Despite the demands for women to be equal in society, in our country, still women face challenges. While laws protect gender equality, non-discrimination, and women's rights, lack of representation, gender-based violence, and domestic violence continue to be challenges in Kosovo. Therefore, implementation of international frameworks that address elimination of gender inequalities, specifically in the peace and state-building processes, are important. Domestic legal documents regulating various aspects of the Resolution 1325. Kosovo's legislation and gender policies align with international and regional human rights standards, reflecting principles set by the European Union and the United Nations as part of its broader integration efforts. In this regard, although Kosovo is not signatory member of international human rights treaties and is not part of the UNSC resolutions, including the 1325 Resolution on Women, Peace and Security, its domestic legal framework regulates various aspects of the Resolution 1325. These documents are presented below. The Constitution of the Republic of Kosovo. Law number 05/L-020 on gender equality. Law number 05/L-021 on the protection from discrimination. Law number 05/L-019 on ombudsperson. Law number 08/L-185 on prevention and protection from domestic violence, violence against women, and gender-based violence. Law number 03/L-212 on labor. Law number 08/L-228 on general elections in the Republic of Kosovo. Law number 08/L-117 on Government of the Republic of Kosovo. Law number 06/L-113 on organization and functioning of state administration and independent agencies. Law number 04/L-076 on police. Law number 03/L-040 on local self-government. Law number 06/L-123 on Kosovo Security Force. Implementation of Women, Peace and Security Agenda in Kosovo. On February 20, 2012, the government of the Republic of Kosovo decided to draft a working plan to implement United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. The Agency for Gender Equality within the Office of the Prime Minister led and coordinated the drafting process through a working group composed of institutional representatives, civil society, and international partners. During the drafting process, the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, UN Women, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, gave their assistance to ensuring the process was correct, as well as contributing their expertise as members of the working group. The working plan has 3 objectives related to increasing the participation of women in decision-making and in peace building, promoting a gender-sensitive approach within security institutions and increasing participation of women in security structures, providing functional mechanisms for protection, access to justice, and rehabilitation and reintegration of victims of sexual violence and other forms of violence relating to conflict or war. The working plan is a key tool for integrating the WPS agenda at the national level and ensuring that women's perspectives are included in security sector reform and peace building. Below are some of the aspects that the Kosovo working plan aimed at addressing. Participation of women in peace and security decision-making. Political representation. Women in the security sector. Women in peace negotiations. Protection and prevention of gender-based violence. Addressing sexual violence in conflict. Support for survivors. Reconciliation and post-conflict peace building. Women's role in reconciliation. Civil society contributions. International support and partnerships. UN Women and international organizations. European Union integration process. Moving forward, recommendations for strengthening the WPS agenda in Kosovo. Challenges to implementation. As presented in previous units, Kosovo's legal framework ensures gender equality and inclusion in all aspects of public and private life, with public authorities adopting mechanisms and measures to implement the principles of the WPS agenda. However, the cultural and social barriers manifested in gender stereotypes and patriarchal norms still influence the political and social landscape in Kosovo. Challenges also persist in mobilizing sufficient resources to implement the WPS agenda effectively. Both the government and NGOs struggle with lack of capacity, which impedes the provision of services, particularly in rural areas. While progress has been made in addressing war crimes and sexual violence, many survivors of sexual violence during the Kosovo War continue to experience stigmatization and lack of justice. Addressing these gaps remains a crucial part of post-conflict recovery. Some key areas for improvement include further supporting the integrations of gender perspectives into Kosovo security institutions to increase women's participation in the Kosovo police and Kosovo security forces. Additionally, capacity building programs for both women and men in the security sector are essential to enhance gender equality and also ensure women's inclusion in peace and security processes. Greater institutional coordination is needed to improve the enforcement of laws on domestic and sexual violence. Specific measures should ensure that survivors have access to justice, health services, and psychosocial support. Strengthening gender quotas and support mechanisms is necessary to increase women's engagements in decision-making and also ensure their meaningful participation in political and public life. Strengthening of local-level initiatives aimed at involving women in peace building, conflict resolution, and community reconciliation. Ensuring the inclusion of women in cross-community and inter-ethnic dialogues, which are vital for Kosovo's long-term peace and stability. As we arrive at the end of this course and the end of the third module for this course, we will end with a summary. We've seen that Kosovo has made significant developments in implementing the WPS agenda. Kosovo's legal framework is aligned with international human rights standards. Gender equality is protected in Kosovo legal framework as a human right, as principle, and as a value, which is reflected in its legal and institutional framework. Kosovo authorities demonstrated commitment and have carried on measures for implementing the WPS agenda, particularly through the adoption of a National Work Action Plan for the UNSCR 1325, integrating women into the security sector and addressing gender-based violence through legal reforms and victim support systems. However, challenges remain in achieving full gender equality, particularly in leadership roles and comprehensive support for the survivors of conflict-related sexual violence. Continued efforts are needed to ensure the effective implementation of the WPS agenda and to create a more inclusive and peaceful society in Kosovo. By continuing to address these challenges and building on existing frameworks, Kosovo can further advance the implementation of the WPS agenda, contributing to a more inclusive, secure, and sustainable peace. Thank you for your interest on following this course.